We are United Nations Association Coventry branch. Are there any politicians here? Are there any local councillors? They were all invited. And all 54 of them were invited.
Lock them up.
You here, the reason that I organised this was to give you the chance of speaking to them, because I had a pretty good idea that they wouldn't be here. Okay, let's try and be fair. This event was organised at short notice. They haven't, they've all got their own work to do. So some of them have already got events organised. I have spoken to some of them and they've said, sorry, we're already doing other things. So you can't totally blame them. But I've spoken to others who say, and I've said, what I want is for the councillors to come and explain what the city is doing to reduce its emissions, and I want the young people to explain to the councillors what they want them to do. And one councillor said, well, I can't talk about what the city's doing about emissions. I don't know. So, Jim O'Boyle has asked people staff from the city councils, this is a letter he sent me, he's responsible for dealing with this within the city. He's asked staff to come here to explain to you what the city's doing. Are there any staff from the city council here? I think this says a lot. This says a lot about what how Coventry is or isn't concerned about climate change. And this is your chance, because we're recording this. So if you want to express your opinion, then you can stand up and speak to those cameras, and we will publish this on YouTube, and then we will send another email to the councillors to say this is what the young people of Coventry want to happen. We listen to Sam and he can explain what he's doing, what his history is.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Samrin Reddy and I'm a member of the UK Youth Parliament. So as a youth organisation, we work to directly address the issues that are faced by young people today. I've always strived to reduce my carbon footprint in all aspects of my life. It started with very simple things, such as turning off the lights and other appliances when not in use. However, I quickly realised that I had to take further action in order to make a positive and lasting impact. During the youth strikes of February, I collected over 500 signatures as part of a petition on climate change, and I went to my local MP to discuss the issue, among other things. But why is climate change so devastating? Natural disasters around the world are occurring at an alarming rate. We are witnessing hurricanes that demolish valuable infrastructure, wildfires that burn thousands of acres of land, and cyclones that cause mass flooding and property damage. In the wake of these disasters, people grieve the loss of loved ones and destroyed properties while anticipating the long road back to personal and communal recovery. In 2018, some of the top global natural disasters include Hurricane Michael, $17 billion, 32 deaths. Typhoon Jebi in Japan, $9 billion, 246 deaths. Typhoon Mangkhut, $6 billion, 161 deaths. In addition to these, there were 42 individual billion-dollar natural disaster events in 2018, well above the average. The total economic costs relating to natural disasters last year was $225 billion US. These figures are staggering. As you can see, organizations such as the United Nations and charities are spending billions in dealing with the after effects of natural catastrophes, in taking care of the damages, providing food and support for displaced people, and rebuilding infrastructure. Over the coming years, more money will be needed to deal with the aftermath of disasters than perhaps working now on formulating preventative measures and taking action. Droughts, floods, wildfires, and hurricanes have already caused multi-billion-dollar losses, and these extreme weather events will only become more frequent and more devastating as the climate continues to change. Tourism, agriculture, and other weather-dependent industries will be hit especially. Food and water shortages will become commonplace. Large-scale migrations of climate refugees will be the result of these events, and the threat of rising sea levels, which will make large parts of the Earth uninhabitable. Last year, 24 million people were displaced by natural disasters, a figure which is likely to increase. This will coincide with mass extinction events of the various species on Earth. We, the young people, are going to inherit this nightmare balancing act of environmental debt. We know there isn't a magic button that can be pressed to reset this situation. We know that there are people that are set in their ways and do not see the issues the same way as we do. We know that some adults are making some changes slowly as they see climate change as just a transition. We see climate change as real action for now. What we need is to work together to understand the common ground and to work towards a common purpose. Young people have strong ideas and voices and are ready to take action. We need the opportunity to meet with world leaders and express our concerns, and with the valuable experience of our combined governments, business leaders, and influencers from all sectors, we can bring about the change we need to protect our futures. We know that we are already having an impact on some business leaders. In an open letter to Greta Thunberg, an investment banker from Generation X called Saskia Beslik states, 100 corporations in the world stand for 71% of all industrial carbon emissions on this planet. We know who they are, we know what their names are, and we know who owns them. It's our parents and grandparents, the savers of the world. If we can redirect just a small percentage of the trillions of dollars invested in these companies to companies that prioritize sustainability, the effect would be profound. End quote. In the 12 years left before global warming becomes irreversible, humanity is tasked with a difficult yet crucial challenge where failing cannot be an option. We have an obligation to settle our differences and combine our knowledge and work ethic to steer away from the negative effects of climate change. We cannot take a seat and witness the world descending into despair. We have a chance of reformation to fix our mistakes. If we are able to make a difference, we will be remembered in history as the generation that saved the world. The future of Earth, our home, lies in our own hands, and it is up to us to determine its fate. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, shall we start giving another member of the audience who hasn't been invited a chance to, or maybe a group of you, a chance to speak to these wonderful city councillors who obviously are deeply committed to climate change. Tell them what you think they should be doing. You know, who wants to give them a message? We can have a group of people out here if you want. Okay.
This young lady here.
Okay, we'll have you two.
Very organised, this. Thank you.
Okay.
Alongside my friend Millie Hilditch-Gray, which I'd like to call up as well. Yeah. So I just have a small statement here. Hi, I'm Shreya Birdy, representing the youth of Coventry and the UK SCN.
Sorry, what's that?
The UK SCN.
What does that stand for?
The UK Student
Climate Network.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Last month, on the 15th of February, 10,000 students from across the UK protested against a lack of government awareness, action, or concern on our imminent climate crisis. Today, on the 15th of March, we stand again in solidarity with young citizens in 123 other countries. Across the world, we've been excluded from participating in the fight against the climate crisis and have been left with no other choice but to take action ourselves. With only 12 years left until we reach our limit, I don't want to live in a world that values green paper over trees and decides to call that progress. Fame and glory over awareness and understanding. Money and politics over the earth that we stand on. Well, today, we take a stand as the generation that will be hit the hardest. Where adults have turned a blind eye, we have to rise, opposed by many. But what option did we have when the ones causing the ecological breakdown have waited this long? Organisers of the strikes in Germany, France and Belgium have met with major political leaders, such as Emmanuel Macron and Mayor Anne Hidalgo. Greta Thunberg has already spoken at the World Economic Forum and the UN COP24 climate conference. The UK must now show its commitment to addressing the climate crisis and immediately reform the policy that is currently failing to keep us below the emissions target. This is something that starts with us. This is something that if Coventry Council is willing to talk to us about, we can help make an impact. I'll now pass on to Millie Hilditch-Gray, who'll take us through the official statement issued by the UK SCN.
Okay, so as Shreya said, we're part of an organisation called the UK SCN. This is the official letter that was written by them to address the government and all politicians. On 15th of February, students across the UK went on strike to publicly demonstrate that we will no longer be pushed out of the dialogue surrounding the critical environmental threat for our generation. On the 15th of March, we the ones leading action to prevent ecological breakdown. Greta Thunberg has spoken at the World Economic Forum and the UN COP, we, the students, must be listened to. We challenge all political leaders. Sincerely, the UK SCN.
Hi, my name's Ellie O'Brien and I met these girls for the first time in person today. But I think climate change is one of the few issues that isn't singly caused by one person or group of people. It's one of the few issues that everybody has something to do with it. Every single person on this planet, all 7.5 billion of us, contribute to climate change. No matter what you say, everyone does something and everyone can do something to reduce it. And as we're at this point with this 12-year ultimatum, once we hit that and we've not done anything, it's your fault, it's everyone's fault. Everyone who didn't do something, everyone who continued to use plastic straws, everyone who continued to use the same carbon emissions that they used to, it's everyone's fault, which is why everyone has to come together to do something about it. Everyone can do something, even if it's small, but when we all come together, we can make a big difference. Thank you.
Ideas that we had for the council in terms of just implementing a few changes to our city that would help, implementing an environmental council that communicates with the council in every school to make sure that as an education system and as the younger generation, we can work towards helping Coventry to become carbon neutral and helping with recycling and stuff like that, things that are going to really make an impact globally.
So my name is Dr. Alistair Smith. I'm a senior teaching fellow in the Department for Global Sustainable Development at the University of Warwick. So broadly we're concerned with the exact issue that we're talking about today here, intergenerational justice and the kind of trade-offs between opportunities for people now and in the future. And often this is mainly mediated by the environment and resource use and environmental sustainability. So we teach a number of things, including challenges of climate change module, which is about the science and governance of climate change, for which I have the pleasure of being joined by my colleague David.
Yeah, so I'm David Mond. I'm a prof in mathematics, but I've become more and more frightened by what's going on in climate change. And I have the great luxury of working in a university which allows me to move from the subject that they hired me to teach towards something that I think is much more important. And I think that one of the problems that we all have is that we're stuck in situations which oblige us to go on doing things that we realise aren't going to contribute or may even work in the opposite direction. But we feel that we don't have a choice about how we work, where we work, what we consume, because there isn't enough opportunity. So I would like very much to be involved with what's going on here. I think this is one of the most hopeful developments that we've seen for years. I'm tremendously impressed with all of you people who are coming up. I think one of the most important things for me today would be to hear what you feel people like us can contribute to make your movement stronger. I mean, I think Alistair and I and Philip have all prepared some kind of talk, but I'm not sure that that's really the right thing. We don't know what you need to hear. We don't know what you want, and I think that would be the most important thing. How can we strengthen your movement? What can we do to help you? What do you want?
So
Yes, come on.
Tell us your name.
Edward.
Okay. Go on.
In a school, I think one of the most important things to do in schools is try and make more people more people aware about how important the environment is, because everybody knows that there will always be a few people who don't understand the seriousness of the situation. Some people will just think that it just means there's a little bit of rubbish here and there. But in reality, what some people don't get is that it goes way, way, way beyond that, and that everything, and that lots of things could end up really bad if people aren't made aware of this environment and nobody does anything to stop it.
Well done.
So, as a result of us organising these strikes, we had a meeting with our head teacher. We're at Finham Park School. We had a meeting with our head teacher to basically tell the school that this is what we're doing on the 15th. And we also have, along with the demands that we are presenting from the UKSCN, we have some things as a school that we'd like you to change and implement. Because, it starts small.
Yeah.
We can do it within our institution.
What were the changes that you want school to do?
We have a list of demands.
Good.
So, our first thing that we proposed was to start a dedicated eco team that the school council can then work with. So we can work on recycling, making sure there are recycling bins around the school site, because although we have had a lot of patronising comments about this and just people saying that it's not really going to work, at least if people are given the option to recycle, it's a start. Exactly.
This is the council's idea of disposing of rubbish. There's no way that we've got separating recyclable from non-recyclable. They've never heard of that idea. Warwick University, everywhere you've got two sets of bins. I mean, that's one of the simple things that the council, you could suggest, would do.
Another thing that we suggested was to get the school canteens to stop using disposable food containers. We have plates, we have metal utensils, but for some reason, every single lunchtime, you just have paper plates being handed out left, right and centre, plastic utensils that people then take outside of the canteen and litter around the school site. Polystyrene cups and plates as well. And the action that the school has already taken against this is to put up signs around the canteen telling people not to take them outside and not to litter, instead of just deciding to get rid of the disposals altogether. Another thing that's a massive issue in schools and institutions as well is there are students like us here that truly care about this stuff and we're passionate enough to come here and voice our opinions, but it's a general theme that there's this massive stigma about being different. And so if you have these beliefs and you have these passions and you voice them, you're suddenly an outsider. You don't fit into the social norms, and you're then written off as somebody who's not socially acceptable, somebody who shouldn't be listened to, and somebody who should be ridiculed. And I think that by forming student councils and student bodies that really push this message and can get it through to everybody else in the school, we can slowly start breaking down this stigma and getting people to voice their true opinions.
And to the governments and to the corporations.
Yes, there is a complete difference between there's so much that we can do and then we need to push for bigger changes. So small changes will lead to bigger changes. So you might sit and think, well, what's me not using a plastic straw going to do? But when everybody starts to do that and everybody becomes accustomed to that idea, people will then become more available to make bigger changes, so then everything will become a lot easier. So then more people will be like, well, maybe then we should make bigger changes to aid our small changes, it's like a domino.
Could I just make a comment there? I think you're absolutely right, and I wanted to say just that point. But by making small changes, you start to develop your own awareness of the bigger changes that are needed. But I think that alongside those small changes, you should also be studying and learning, because that will help you to widen your vision and understand what's needed.
I think there needs to be a lot more education in schools around it, because there's a lot of people, especially in my year, that don't care for it because they don't know the actual impacts that it's going to have.
But not everybody goes to school. Quite a large number of children in this country and around the world are home educated, and yet they know about this stuff. So it's about education. Education doesn't have to happen at school. You can educate yourselves when you're not at school. It doesn't have to be their responsibility to educate and make you aware of what's going on in the world.
It's kind of the same thing though, going back to the stigma point that I made earlier about the fact that kids don't want to do this because it's not cool. It's basically the same thing as reading. Loads of kids don't read, and on World Book Day, we actually find it quite hard to get people excited about it because it's just something that people don't do. And the main reason for that is effort. People don't want to put the effort in where it isn't needed. They won't go away and research these things. They like the information fed to them, which is why having this education in school as a compulsory part of the curriculum will work, because then people have to learn about it. It's something that school kids will get educated on, and it'll become normal.
Teach people how to teach themselves.
Starts off that interest and passion in students.
Can I also respond to that as well? I think by starting more eco-groups like you suggested, I think is a way to reduce the stigma. In fact, my school actually has a dedicated eco-group. They're called the Eco Committee, and I've worked with them on numerous occasions, and they've already actually done a lot to help with problems around school, like they've installed plastic bins. And since their establishment, we noticed a change in attitudes, an attitude of people more willing to actually talk about the environment and talk about climate change. So having more eco-committees in other schools will allow to facilitate that change in attitude to a more favourable attitude of everyone doing their bit to stop climate change.
So yeah, I agree. I think before you start pushing it in school as a mandatory subject, I think it would be better to make a committee first, settle it in, because if you immediately throw other kids into it and tell them, okay, you need to learn about this, you need to go home and study it, lots will be pushed away. So if you change the attitude before you force it, well, not force it, it won't feel like it's being forced. And yeah, that's my point.
So I think this is a really valuable discussion. So as an educator, I totally recognise this issue of engaging with people of any age who don't necessarily have a pre-interest in the thing that you would like them to learn. I guess the mindset to try to have, and I think you summed it up nicely, is to try to engage people in a way that can access their interests. So maybe framing climate change as a big global kind of thing, there's lots of catastrophe going on, might not be the way, but to think about how you can connect to people's lived experience. So why would it matter to a kid in your school from Coventry as opposed to the context?
We are kind of the minority in schools. Personally, I have faced a lot of mocking and stuff being said about me because I'm doing this. And I think if we had assemblies, say we had lecturers like yourself come in and just not force it onto people like you said, but just make them aware, because most people in schools don't actually know about what we're doing, and which is why there is such a bad stigma around it from our own peers. And if we had assemblies where just literally telling people the facts and what they can do to help can really
in an engaging way as well. I mean, you're a super engaging lecturer. Absolutely. We need more people like you. But maybe as well, if we as a student body take this forward, certainly because we are of the target age in getting this message out, I think we can certainly try and educate more kids in schools and really, really get a passion going behind this movement.
I think we'd be privileged to be invited.
Yeah.
I think there's a simple way you could implement something you can implement in your school. A lot of children like movies. Everybody is excited about going to the cinema. There's a documentary by Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know if you all heard about Hurricane Maria and the 2017. This was very devastating for my region, and we are trying to do things, to do changes, but it is so little what we can do because the impact doesn't come from us. The little carbon emission that we give is like a dot compared to what the UK or the US is giving, but the Caribbean regions are the ones who are negatively impacted, and a lot of people are losing their lives, property, and the economy is struggling. So it is very good that I'm very honored to see your champion in this.
You missed the introduction when we were shown photographs of all 56 councillors who were all invited, and not one of whom has come.
That's not true, I'm here actually. Get the background out of the way.
Please. Because you're the only one, so... Sorry, I don't recognise you. What's your name?
Roger Bailey.
Okay, Mr. Bailey. Thank you very much for coming.
I just wanted to hear what the passion was about. And it really is a shock to hear that you get bullied because of your beliefs. And I'm really surprised because I really thought that the youth of today were the ones that were leading this, yet there's an awful lot that aren't. So,
Well, I mean, we are.
Yeah, there is a large number of people who have striked for this, like across the world.
Yeah.
But then there will always be people that don't agree with you, and
always.
like just
Resilience
like
is a
it, yeah.
massive part of it, because if you're passionate about something and if you, like us, will bring your opinions forward, there's always going to be somebody that opposes you.
well, I
And
get
you-
that as well. I'm on the wrong side sometimes. That's life. But yeah, and also raised the point about the rubbish bins, where you throw all the rubbish away. It's a valid point. Maybe we can do something about that and try and get some sort of recycling plant within the council. There's something like 5,000 people working within the council, so that will have a big impact. So that's something I can take forward.
Even if, because we were talking about forming school councils, we could also use those school councils if they are all around Coventry and communicate back with the council
So
on what seems to be
is it
implemented.
useful to have the local ward councillors involved in that?
100%.
Because
Yeah.
because you're talking about people being there, corporate assemblies, that's fine. But what about the ward councillors? Because one of the issues we have with schools, problems outside schools, for instance, people parking in the wrong places, but we should be more involved and engaged with the schools. So maybe ward councillors, and everyone has a ward councillor. It's just one way of engaging.
Yeah, perhaps the meeting, so like once every so often, here, where actually the councillors actually do come, you know?
Well, I'm here.
Well, you're here, yes.
I don't think people really care about things until it directly affects them. Like Foxford, for instance, no one really spoke about knife crime at all until we had when one of our students was killed. And when that happened, you see the school change completely, how everyone now feels strongly about knife crime. And I think it's the same thing here, where when these 12 years are up and climate change directly affects us, that's when people are going to start caring about it. But then by that time, it's going to be too late anyway, and so we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So I think when people think about climate change and global warming, they think of Antarctica. They think of Antarctica melting. They think about the polar bears. We don't think about how in the years to come, this is going to have a direct impact on us and on humanity itself. And I think that's the thing we've got to bring up. And like they were saying about the media, there's a saying that says whoever controls the media controls the mind. And the reason Brexit and knife crime is such a big thing is because the internet and the media make it a big thing. And I think if climate change is made a big thing in the media, everyone will think it's a big thing and everyone will then start making a change.
And we can get Councillor Bailey's feedback on whether these ideas are good, and also your ideas. So these are just
No
a
pressure
few.
then. There's no pressure.
No pressure. So 41 councils in the UK have declared a climate emergency. So there's a resolution passed in a council that says, we are in a climate emergency, and the main aim is to build public awareness that we need to do something. There are no councils in the West Midlands that have done this. Solihull tried to do it and the councillors blocked it. And there's a list there. So that's one possible thing that we could ask the councillors to do.
And Wales and Scotland have both declared national emergencies, is that right? Welsh Assembly and Scottish Assembly both declared national emergencies.
Another thing that you can do, I mean, one way that you can express your opinion is to create a petition. So at least 5 people need to sign a petition before it's valid. If you get 10,000 signatures, then you can ask a senior council officer, such as the chief executive, to come to a public meeting. If you get 15,000, the full council has to debate your motion. So, and there's a link here. This presentation will be on our website.
Add to that. Is that all right if I add to that?
Sure, absolutely.
I do a lot of petitions. You're right, 5 people need to do that. But you can get a councillor to actually sponsor that petition. I've done over 40 so far. And what you do, that means that you are responsible for that petition. So first of all, it gets declared at full council, which will be tomorrow afternoon. And you simply say, I'm going to stand up and talk about this petition. Then it has to go to a cabinet member. And when it goes to a cabinet member, it's a public meeting. And you can talk about it, and so can the people who've signed this, 2 or 3 spokespeople. So it actually gets debated within the council system. And actually, we've got 2 parties here, Conservatives and Labour, as you know, and you can actually persuade one of them to actually have it as a debate. So without that, you can even have a debate within full council if one of the sides want to do it. So anyone can do that. You could approach a councillor to do that, or you could go to the 2 party leaders, both parties, and actually present that to the party leaders. So that is an option for you.
I have a question.
What should the message be that we're sending to Coventry City Council? Are we creating a petition? Are we asking them to put litter bins out? Are we asking them to have a climate emergency declaration? What do we ask? Because you've got to ask them something. And maybe if we can thrash out some ideas now, we can then...
A youth climate group.
Yes, that's what we want.
The council.
That's what we want.
And then represent you.
Well, your idea was to have one in every school, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But if they had a council in every school, then representatives from each school
to come together with the council.
I think a dialogue needs to be had between different schools, because
definitely,
like then other head teachers can speak to each other, because obviously your head teacher seemed pretty sort of
very proactive, really.
Yeah, about it. And if like head teachers from the city could speak to each other about this issue, it can like make sure that people are more involved from all the different schools in Coventry, and the council could help with that just by making sure that all the schools were working for the same issue together.
Because our head teacher especially found it very hard trying to authorise our absences for this and trying to actually influence some action, because it's something that's never really been done before.
Yeah.
I think if you declare it as a state of emergency, that will get the attitude to change, you know.
Yeah.
When we called it global warming, that honestly, that didn't have enough negative connotations. You know, people thought, oh, it's warming, it's not just gonna be a bit inconvenient. If you describe it as an emergency, people might think, oh, now it's coming, now it's going to change. So it's the words that we use about it will change the attitudes that we have.
Yeah. Climate crisis.
Yeah, crisis.